I don't know. I never get this right. At the last minute, it hit me with this thing of rotate to stream in landscape. Is this streaming in landscape or in portrait? Can someone tell me?
Is this streaming in landscape or in portrait? Can someone tell me?
There we go. Forgot to turn off my volume. Can everyone hear me? I could hear myself, so I'm assuming everyone could hear me. All right then. This is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords, and welcome to the 4,000 subscriber live stream. And I think that it'll be quite a lot of fun. We'll be talking about a lot of things. As always, if you have any questions for me, I will consider answering them as I do in every live stream. I also have some topics ready in case everybody's a bit shy with the questions. And well, in the first place, I suppose that the first thing we should address as a topic is our deep and sincere thanks to all the SJWs out there, because if it wasn't for them, I mean, we would have eventually gotten here anyway, right? But we wouldn't have gotten here this fast, because basically I was lingering at around what was it, 3,990 subscribers or something like that. And then the whole issue of the RPG RedList, as they call it, the TTRPG RedList, which is actually just a consumer report list about RPGs and their politicization. If you don't know the details of that, check out my previous video, the one just before this one, where I talk about the list. It's a list that classifies RPGs into green, yellow, RPG publishers and writers and companies, right? Into three categories: the green, which are people that are either whose games are either completely apolitical or who have been actively anti woke or anti politicization, and then you have the yellow list, which is a lot of the kind of mainstream companies which have bent the knee to different degrees, which could or could not be just considered lip service. And then after that, you have the actual, red list, which are the companies that are full of absolutely toxic politicized gamers who make, as a rule, politicized games as well. Either, to get on the red list, you either have to make games that have expressly political elements, or you have to make statements about your games in public social media to the tune of something like, if you don't support my ideology, then we don't want you in the hobby, or you shouldn't buy our games, right? So all of these guys got into a tizzy about this list. Now, I want to point out again, I didn't make this list. I had nothing to do with creating this list. Yes, it was made on the RPG site, but the RPG site is a forum. It has thousands of members. It had nothing to do with me. And yet the SJWs immediately blamed me. Now, I'm very happy about the list. I endorse it completely, but I just don't want to take credit for someone else's very hard work. That the credit for this list belongs to Occult. And the thing was, though, that in their furor about me, they drew attention to the RPG site, to my channel, to my products. So this past week or so, I've ended up making quite a lot of money, getting quite a lot of new members to the RPG site. Now, some of those might be SJWs coming to troll, but some of them very clearly are not. And also getting like 50 subscribers, right? So we're now way over the 4,000 mark, and therefore can finally have this 4,000th subscriber live stream. So there we have it. Let me just take a quick look at what you guys are posting here. Lots of comments about my cats. I kind of hope my cats don't show up tonight, to be honest. They always have their own mind about this, but there's my setups for live streams, because I do them next to my computer, are always very tenuous because there's not a lot of room here, and it's hard to set up somewhere where the books will be able to act as the backdrop. And so if the cats show up, they're gonna probably send everything crashing to the floor, and because we're live, it's gonna be quite a mess. But whatever. Um, let's see what else we have. It is landscape. Okay, that's good. Um, Judd Goswick says, "Do you have plans to circle back to Lords of Olympus sometime?" Well, to be honest, Judd, probably not. Um, although Lords of Olympus is an open game and can therefore anyone can make products for it. I'll point out that I actually sold, as part of this deal that happened with Presses Intermedia and Spectre Press. It was a very, very favorable deal to me. In that I was basically traded from one to the other. It's complicated, but the point is that in the process, Presses retained Lords of Olympus, gave me a lot of money for it, perfectly happy about it, right? But I'm not even technically unlike Lords of Olympus is a game that is almost unique. Just Lords of Olympus and No Murdered are the only two RPGs I've ever made that I don't actually own, and therefore make no profits from the sales of, right? So there you have it. Odds are I'm not going to be putting a lot of time into Lords of Olympus products. Plus, if I want like weird occult modern stuff now, I'll probably do products for the Invisible College. Universal Knight says, "Gotta love when companies pander to the customer base they prefer to have rather than the customer base they actually have." Yeah, that is always funny, because the logic behind it is a logic that seems coherent to kind of stupid people, right? It's the logic that says, well, we're I don't know, the New York Mets, right? We want to broaden the appeal of our fan base, right? And so right now we have a huge fan base consisting of New York Mets fans, but what we would really like to do is also be able to diversify that fan base to appeal to New York Yankees fans, right? So we're gonna make a bunch of product, of like what is it, accessories and things like that, that have the kind of the New York Mets typeface, but have the New York Yankees, and colors, but but it says New York Yankees there, or Yankees fan welcome, or we love the Yankees, right? And of course, the supposed logic of that is, oh, then you'll have both things, right? But it's not true. You will have neither, because the Yankees fans were never going to go and buy the Mets products, and the Mets fans are going to be so pissed off at you that they're going to stop coming, right? But anyway. Eric Sheely says, "RPGs should be a place to escape from the world we know to something different, not a soapbox for leftist BS." Well, absolutely. Totally agree with you there. Total Party Skills. Hey, Total Party Skills, congratulations on finishing the writing of your game. It's always exciting when you finish, when you've got a book done and ready to publish, He says, "I'm very close to hitting 50 subs after this weekend. Thanks again to RPG Pundit here for consulting on the book I just finished." Yeah, Orc and Bone. You guys should, when it comes out, you guys should check out that game, because it's very unusual. When Total Party Skills first presented it to me, as like, he asked me, "Do you want to consult on it?" I said, "Okay, well, what do you want to, what's the game about? What is it OSR?" He goes, "Yeah, it's OSR." I'm like, "Okay, well, that's good." And then he says, "Well, it's a setting where there's no humans, and you're mainly playing orcs." And I was like, "But that might not be totally to my taste." So he said, "Well, I know, but you can still." So I said, "Okay, fine, I'll take a look." And when I read it, I was surprised by actually how good it was. So, and that's me being honest with you about it, and that's quite unusual for considering that I am a humana-centric gamer in anything that isn't a Gonzo game, and Orc and Bone isn't really a Gonzo game at all. So, but it's interesting. It's a different idea. Anyways, welcome here. Poncho Goblin says, "Hey Goblin, hey Pundit, glad to have contributed to the list." And I'm glad too. I'm glad for everybody who's done their part in helping form that list. Eric C says, and it's a shame that Wizards of the Coast went woke but did not go broke. Well, you have to understand that going broke for Wizards of the Coast is owned by Hasbro. Hasbro is one of the largest multinational corporations in the world. Technically, it's almost impossible for them to go broke. If they went broke, then that would be, in the sense of going under, we'd have way bigger problems, right? So the standard of what defines going broke for a company like Wizards of the Coast is totally different than the standards for even, like for almost anything else, right? Now the division could go broke, and that might happen. You never know. And really, the hallmark is going to see a decrease in product sales, and then at what point does that decrease become enough that it's actually a threat to the ongoing viability of that division of Hasbro, of Wizards of the Coast or its D&D as a product. And because D&D, in this case, 5th edition, it was made by some very intelligent people, I feel like I have to say. And so it had a lot of inertia going behind it. It has a lot of goodwill, and Wizards has been very careful in that they're doing this kind of two-sided game where they're moving leftward in all areas, but they're moving leftward much faster with their tweets and stuff and what they're doing outside of the main products, and much slower in any of the actual physical books, right? So you'll see they look much more leftist in, say, their posts on Twitter or Facebook, somewhat leftist in their posts in their live stream events and con events and panels and things like that. But then when you get to that actual book, right, they're now moving leftwards, but they're moving leftwards comparatively much slower than in those other areas, right? So they're trying to do this idea of boiling the frog, right? Because they know that 90% or more of their customers don't look at their social media, don't look at these special events, don't go to panels, they're not on Twitter, right? So they have no idea what Wizards is posting. All they see are the books that are at Barnes and Noble, and those are the books that they will or will not buy. And each one for the last 4 books or so has been progressively more leftist than the last, and they're slowly trying to move towards that. And there's already some signs that the more recent books have been trailing in sales to the older ones, right? Like that subsequent books are doing worse. And the real question is, for example, what will happen with Strixhaven now, right? Because there have been enough cases of books that have this leftist stuff in it that could piss off the customer base. The question is whether it's already done it enough that the next product will see a big fall in viewing. Like, you got to remember that The Last Jedi didn't see a big fall in viewing, right? It was a terrible, toxic leftist product. But the problem is that Star Wars was still running on the impetus of goodwill. So, it got whatever, $1 billion or whatever it got. I forgot what it got, but it did well in the cinema. But then the next movie, Solo, it tanked completely, and it did. And even though you could argue Solo was not a great movie, the reason it tanked so badly was because of The Last Jedi, right? It wasn't because of Solo at all. It was because people who had gone to see The Last Jedi decided at that moment, fuck it, I'm never buying another ticket to a Star Wars movie, right? And there's going to be people with each successive gradient of leftism being introduced into the Wizards products that are going to say, well, screw this, I'm never buying another Wizards book, right? So it's just a question of how quickly that happens. Jeremy Griffin says, politics and RPGs are great when they're in the world, not modern politics. Well, exactly. If you buy Dark Albion, you'll see there's a lot of politics in Dark Albion. They're all 15th century politics about, matters of the state, a dynastic struggle and all of that stuff. Game of Thrones type stuff, but none of it is a commentary on modern day political positions. And that is such a lame thing to do, right? Because it's so shallow and so simple that instead of actually looking at and addressing what were these epic conflicts of the past, because some of them are resolved, right? Some of them are things that we now look at and we just don't, we realize that it was nonsense, right? But some of them are actually these epic stories of issues that in some ways still resonate. But if you take any of those, historical issues and just instead of that, you just slap over it, well, you know what, this is about, I don't know, giving bisexuals the vote, right? like as if that wasn't happening. But okay, but let's say that's what you're trying to claim is now not happening and insisting that it must happen. It's really stupid, right? Like taking Richard III and making him into an analogy for Donald Trump doesn't make Richard III better, and it doesn't actually help you fight Donald Trump. It's like it's just generally makes everything worse. Charlotte Williams says, "Hey Pundit, give me your thoughts on Pendragon. I just got the 5.2 edition. Is it worth to track down earlier stuff?" Well, I'm trying to remember which edition I'm using. Well, the Great Pendragon campaign, which was a product that came out, is in the previous edition to whatever. And we're back. I think we disconnected there briefly. I hope you guys caught what I was saying to Charlotte. Charlotte, check out the Great Pendragon campaign, really good. Pendragon itself was a kind of influence on Lion and Dragon, of course, and on Dark Albion. So I certainly say it's a good product. John Napier says, just dropping by to say that I enjoy your videos and you've inspired me to write my own OST style RPG. Keep up the good work. You got you on as white noise at the moment. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Shadzar says Hasbro is the second largest toy manufacturer in the world behind Lego. Yeah, they're also in other stuff too, though. I'm pretty sure they got like mercenaries or something too. You got to watch out for those Hasbro soldiers of fortune that they have. It's the thing about mega corporations; they go off into weird tangents, Then you've got Shawner Film says Marvel is owned by Disney. It can't go broke. No, it can. But again, just like with Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast, it can do so badly that the parent company shuts down the division. That would be the kind of equivalent of going broke, where the company, Disney might very well look at Marvel, for example, Marvel Comics at least, maybe not Marvel Cinema yet, but maybe if it keeps screwing up the way it has. But they can end up looking at Marvel Comics and saying, you know what, it's just not worth making these comics anymore. Just shut the whole division down, right? And then that's the end of Marvel Comics, at least until some other executive decides to try to revive it in 10 or 20 years. And that could happen with D&D, Universal Knight says, thanks for the response, RPG Pundit. I found you a few weeks back and I ordered a print copy of Star Adventure since I'm more of a sci-fi guy. Well, great. I hope you really enjoy it. Star Adventure is a great product and it's doing quite well. It's an Electrum bestseller, I believe. Yeah, an Electrum bestseller. It's got to be getting close to gold at some point here. And then let's see, what else have we got? Wizards of the Coast, Trial Farnado says, Wizards of the Coast is moving left only in lip space, well, but what do you mean by only in lip space? Lip space means imposing leftist messages into the products as propaganda. That's basically the argument that we're making. That's the thing that is worth complaining about. I mean, yeah, Wizards of the Coast is not, as far as I know, donating money to Antifa or campaigning to end masculinity or something, but that doesn't make them less dangerous, right? Propaganda is an extremely important part of any war. Just lighting my pipe here. Shadzar says, the funny thing is modern D&D players embraced Magic the Gathering settings in D&D, but Magic the Gathering rejected D&D from Magic the Gathering. Well, good on them. And anyways, it remains to be seen how successful the Magic the Gathering setting of Strixhaven is going to be. Win Not Set. Switched my 2 5e campaigns over to DCC a couple of months ago. My players are now hooked, never going back, using it to cover any holes in the rules, using 1E to cover any holes in the rules. Yeah, DCC is a great game. I can certainly endorse that. My World of the Last Sun is a 9-year-long DCC campaign, so Dungeon Crawl Classics, great game. Terrence Jewell says, I got a funny feeling D&D peaked a while ago. There's less and less hype with each new product. I believe that there's a sign that there's a very slow reduction in sales, but yeah, it's certainly still viable for them. Judd Goswick says, we need an alternative way to advertise good games. Well, right now, for most games that aren't Wizards, word of mouth is the only way. It could be good to have more than that, sure. Shadzar says, need an inappropriate character zine. I really don't think so. Knights and Legends says, thank you for keeping the RPG site such a great and fun place to hang around. We need more people like you. Thank you very much. Paul Cooper says, we need a compilation supplement for World of the Last Sun. Well, the next, as far as I know from Spectre, the next compilation that is being worked on is, I believe, going to be Medieval Authentic Adventures, I think. And then after that, it'll probably be the compilation of Gonzo gaming supplementary material for the World of the Last Sun, I think. But keep in mind that each of these could take months and months to arrive. I have no idea when they're coming out. And I don't actually have any idea when any of my new products are coming out now. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We have a problem here. Please do not knock over my stuff, Meatball. Meatball, behave. You need to behave, Meatball. Damn it. Damn it, Meatball. Oh, is she gonna come around here? Yeah, she's coming around. Look at this. We have a Meatball. Hello, Meatball. She's going right in there. Hello. Meatball has joined us for the 4,000 subscriber live stream. As this is as close up Meatball as you can get. She's just sniffing around at everything because I've changed the scenario, so she's not happy about that. Oh, there she goes. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed the presence of Meatball. Let's see what else we've got here. Geez, you guys are typing fast. What book had the great gay pride parade in Waterdeep? There was that was the Waterdeep one. What the heck was it? There was one set in Waterdeep. That's my answer. Somebody will have the actual name down there somewhere. There's some of you are talking about the new world setting by Tracy Hickman. I mean, good for him. We'll see how good it is. But it's a good sign that he's doing something, alternative, right? We have Meatball. Meatball is apolitical. Yeah. Hello, Meatball. Okay, there we go. And we got basically people talking about the faux Dragonlance. I don't have much to comment about that yet because I haven't been able to get any kind of news about what specifically it is. I guess we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So, while this list was being hysterically screamed about by the SJWs, They were obviously trying to involve me and attribute attacks to me on this. People were posting all kinds of stuff. Of course, the standard stuff, right? Trying to accuse me of being a fascist or something like that, which is just ridiculous if you know what my actual politics are. They're accusing me of racism or sexism or homophobia, all of which are not true. Except in the twisted and bizarre ways that they define it, because they define it as basically anyone who disagrees with us is a sexist, racist, or homophobe. But I don't think that's a legitimate, that is not a definition that I accept. They were also making like some really, really bizarre sometimes claims about me that just are not only not true, but where the hell do they get the idea from? Is just beyond me, right? And one that I saw bandied about that I would kind of like to address, right, is somebody claiming, well, there were a lot of people trying to claim that I'm somehow lying about my products making money, right? which is crazy, right? Like you just have to look on drive-through, you look at my on Amazon and what have you, wherever I'm selling it, you can see the proof right there. Right, like I am making money and quite a bit of money off RPGs, not to mention from YouTube, from the RPG site advertising, and well from consulting also. Right now I was just consulting for Orc and Bone. I'm doing another consultation for a Raiders of R'lyeh source book. I'm doing okay. So they're trying to make out as though that my actual financial stability isn't from RPGs, that I don't make any money from them, and that and this is the part that's funny, that I'm actually a trust fund baby, right? And I'm living off a family trust fund. And I want to nip that in the bud right here. Now, first of all, some people, how this came about might be that some SJW was confused between me and Zach Smith. Now, I'm not saying Zach Smith is a trust fund baby. I am saying that I saw people claiming he was years ago before they started claiming I am, right? It could be that it's a case of them just, the SJWs tend to just mash all of their enemies together. So anything that one of them did, the others did. So it could be that, but it could also just be because some of these guys might have noted in some of my blog entries or whatnot, I've occasionally commented that I did come out of, when I'm talking about class struggle, I don't try to, unlike these guys who are all champagne socialists, right? And then pretend to be the working man, right? They pretend to come from poverty. All these people who went to college are at least middle class, and a lot of them are, the ones that have time, the kind of time to be SJWs, are one of two things. Well, three things: either school teachers, registered sex offenders, or trust fund babies, right? So they're accusing people of what they are. But my family was fairly well to do. There's no question about that. But I did not have a trust fund. I've never had a trust fund. I have not been financially supported in any way by my family from the age of 18 onwards. Well, that's technically not true, because I have to report that my mom, God bless her, still sends me $100 every year on my birthday. That's her birthday present to me. So if you want to count that, maybe that's what they mean by a trust fund, $100 a year from my mom for to buy myself something nice with. But that's it. That's it. I worked my way through university. I paid off all my own student loans, and ever since then, I've earned everything I have through my own efforts. And I'm not going to say that my family is absolutely perfect by any means, But certainly one thing that in retrospect, though there were times when I was not nearly as happy with this, right? Because when you're a teenager, uh, you do stupid things like believe in socialism. But but nowadays, I will point out that I'm very grateful that my father was not the type of person who would who would set up a trust fund for me and give me an allowance, in all through my life, and not, expect me to do anything for myself, right? Because there are some people, and I think that's part of the ruination of our Western society, is that the upper classes have become completely decadent, and they are, where there are these people that the kind of people that are going to these high end universities and then trying to claim that they are going to fix the injustices of the world and stand and fight for, poor urban black people or Latinos or whatever, when they have no idea about any of these groups, and are just looking to give themselves something to do fundamentally, and something to do meaning also something to wreck, because that's all that they've been taught to do, is to break things. And they're completely spoiled. They think that if you break things, there are no consequences because their parents never gave them consequences. So in my own case, my parents told me from well in advance that I was not going to get any kind of support from them until they died. Gratefully, my parents are both very much alive. So, I have never had an inheritance. I have never had a trust fund, um, and that is, that's the case until until my parents pass away, which I hope is not going to be in a long time, right? Though, I mean, they're quite old. But this notion that I somehow don't earn my own living is completely ridiculous. It's totally unfounded. And I thought that since that was the one that kind of pissed me off the most, because it suggested that I'm just an idler, right? And I hate that, this notion, because I work like crazy. All right, let me get back to seeing what the comments are saying. Judd Goswick says, tell us what's going on in your Invisible College game. All right, I will tell you guys that in just 1 second. Jeff B says, did you get that Getting Old in the RPG Hobby article I sent you on Twitter? I think I did, but I don't remember what if I read it. I'm sorry, Jeff. I don't recall. I have to say, I've got some cognitive decline of my own, not caused by whatever the hell it is that Joe Biden has done, but to himself. But mine is probably from excessive smoking of things that weren't tobacco and all through university. So I don't remember exactly what it was about. Total Party Skills says Taladas is better than Anslot. I absolutely agree. Taladas is the only part of the Dragonlance setting that I thought was really exciting as an RPG setting. The rest of it is not really all that exciting. The Vidra says, one SJW guy on Twitter screenshotted anyone following RPG Pundit and posted it saying he was going to block them all. I took that list and followed all the guys the SJW guy blocked. Well, I hope you shared that list with people so that other people will do the same. That's a great idea. I would love to see all of the people that follow me following each other and therefore strengthening our network. And again, it's funny how the RedList company guys are so good at making own goals, and making me better and making our movement stronger because of them. Combat Board Game says, Big Chungus is obviously not apolitical. Big Chungus is obviously a fat cat. Terrence Schul says, Trust Fund Baby. Sounds like they're projecting, undoubtedly. Well, Not says, John Wick is going all Matt fantastic. Yeah, well, I don't know what's, John Wick has got some serious problems, I think. I don't know what's going on with him. Let me see now. Yeah, John Wick needs to finish his Kickstarters first, says Chud Goswick. Absolutely. It's incredible, these people doing these moral stands on issues that don't get their actual work done. You know, clean your room, people. Terrence says, can't have student loans if you never get educated, taps head. Well, that's funny in one sense, but in another sense, you know, like it is, I would say in this day and age, you know, I went to university, I studied in the humanities, did degrees in history and comparative religion, comparative studies. But I would never recommend someone to do that now. You know, I would say go to university if you have to, because you have to be an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor. But don't get $200,000 in debt or whatever you're going to get in debt in order to get a degree in English or in, you know, God help you, communications or you know, art or something like that. And not just because it's not economically worth it, but also because you're going to be taught toxic lies that will poison your soul, right? You're not going to be given an actual education. Use that money to educate yourself in other ways and get a step up on working in the world, you know, figure out ways to make money that don't require you to have, you know, because almost anything you can do in the humanities, having the degree might be an edge, but it's not like being a doctor where you have to have the degree, right? Anyway, some more stuff on wizards. Currently, Charles Smith says, currently smoking. I am currently smoking. This doesn't mean we're finishing the show. Stanwell Deluxe plus Argento Natural. Are we up to date? Oh yeah, we're up to date. All right. Very good. So someone asked about my Invisible College campaign. It's going very well. The campaign now has gotten the characters up to about mid-level, you could say. And it's fascinating watching in that process how, like, when you start an Invisible College campaign, your characters, you know, they'll know a tiny little bit of magic. They'll have knowledge about magic, and then they'll be able to maybe do one or two things, but they're not going to be very impressive things. They're going to be things that, like, you know, will maybe give you a +1 to any roll based on a certain subject, right? And then, you know, as you start building up in levels and you start gaining more of the practices and theories, you suddenly see it's like change, where suddenly magic goes from being something that helps you in a campaign where you're primarily having to engage in mundane espionage or violence or what have you, into something that becomes like really central, right? Like, so when you can start using, you know, when you can start creating astrological talismans that'll make you invisible or let you, you know, teleport from one place to another. When astral, excuse me, when astral travel starts to get really sophisticated, suddenly you're doing like all kinds of exciting stuff, right? And so it becomes very interesting, the sudden boost in power levels. In the last session, they broke up this sex trafficking ring that was disguised. Well, it was disguised as a porn company, which was in fact in both cases fronts for a secret East Indian black magic cult that was making inroads into America, right? And it was very interesting because the group, you know, in the Invisible College, your player character team is part of what's called a hall, which is like a cell of the Invisible College. That the Invisible College works on a kind of a cell system, so like much like, you know, with spies or whatever, so that you don't have immediate easy contact with other members of the Invisible College. There are some connections, but you don't get to just, you know, you don't have regular interactions with other guys. And in the campaign so far, they'd had one or two interactions with people who are also in the Invisible College. But this time they ended up teaming up with an entire hall that was based where, because they had to go from where they were, which is Philadelphia, all the way to Oakland to fight this sect. and they ended up teaming up with another hall that was in Oakland. That hall was totally different from them because, like, you know, some halls are going to be operatives like they are, where they're going to go in and shoot people and use magic and blow up stuff and take out enemies, right? And then there are going to be other halls that are going to be mainly about research, or there are going to be other halls that are she's back. Oh no, no, hey, you watch it, you watch yourself. Do not cause trouble here. No, come on, get out of there. Hey. God damn, why don't my cats listen to me at all? Do not click around here. Here, come on. Come here. Come on. Do not knock over my shit. Come on. God damn it. Meatball. She's just causing havoc. Absolute havoc, this cat. She looks so innocent. She knows she's misbehaving. You know that they did a study that says, dogs, when you talk to them, they can register a certain amount of what you're saying. They kind of understand what you're saying. It doesn't mean that they know English or something, but they know the meanings associated with certain sounds you make that are words, right? Apparently cats know far more than dogs do, actually. They recognize language and instructions far more than dogs. They just don't give a crap. They just don't care. They don't obey them. Which is pretty much sums up everything every cat owner ever knew about cats. Hey. That's right. Get out of the way. There you go. She should come and sit on my lap, damn it. Guess it's already too hot for that nowadays. It's not really. It's only like 16 degrees here. But anyway, 16 Celsius. But sorry, guys. I was talking to you about the Invisible College. And so they ran into another one. And, this other cell is a cell that was like mostly dedicated to trying to fulfill the role of the Invisible College as promoting the spiritual evolution of humanity. And, these were mostly hippies. It was Oakland, right? And they right next to Berkeley, and they were trying to do so by engaging in community projects and promoting the education of people. They're like, well, that's an important part of the whole. If we're just blowing up the other guys, we're not actually creating the spiritual evolution of humanity, right? So and the player characters are just like baffled by this, of course, right? They're like, wait, so how often do you kill people? And they're like, well, once in a while when we absolutely have to. So it was a very, very funny interaction that they had. And the campaign's going great. All the players are really dedicated to it, and because it was meant to be a playtest campaign. We played a few playtest sessions, and then everybody said, well, can we continue? And I said, yeah, okay. So we did. Anyway, let me catch up again on the comments here. Malachi's Mercurial Musings says, I'm starting to think that the cringiest people in the hobby don't leave Twitter. I have yet to see one in real life. Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, I would say the cringiest people in the hobby are not actually in the hobby. They're only on social media. So they're whether or not they leave Twitter, the point is they don't actually game, right? They talk about games, they try to take over games, they try to subvert games, they try to destroy games, but they don't actually play. Shadzar says, we need to get Pundit on a stream with Ethan Van Scriber. Comicsgate meets the OSR. Yeah, I mean, that would be great. if you guys could get Ethan, if he's interested, I'd be glad to talk with him. I'm a fan. Rob Couture says, RPG Pundit fails his animal handling check. Yeah, that's pretty normal for me, actually. Sadwing Raging says, get control of your familiar. Well, the thing is, the reason we all get along is because I don't believe in trying to control your cats, I know there's people that will like even try to do cat training and stuff. That's stupid. If you don't like how cats are, why do you have one, right? Like, get yourself a dog. Let me keep looking here. Pundit, what do you think about this huge funding for D&D 5e content on Kickstarter? Is there? I mean, I don't know. I'm sure that there are some 5e sourcebook stuff that are like. Do you have specific examples of what you mean to say, Jay Never? Obviously, I know there's a lot of projects on Kickstarter that get a lot of money. I've never done a Kickstarter myself. I'd be very nervous to do one because, you know, my reputation, I think, is based on my products, right? If you know, it's amazing to me how there's some designers that don't seem to have any qualms whatsoever about basically defrauding their customers. Like, I guess for some of them, of course, it's a trick they're only ever going to need to do once, but still. It's like that old story of, you know, there's a guy selling ice cream and he's selling it for, you know, a dollar a popsicle or whatever. And he looks over, there's a guy comes over in another cart there, he's got like $1 million per popsicle ice cream, right? And the guy goes, well, what the hell? Do you actually ever sell it? And he goes, nope, but I only got to get one, and you know, that would be it. So maybe that's what they're up to. Some people pointing out that people don't control cats. Cats are the owners of people. Someone else said cats are a struggle when you submit to their whims, things settle down. I mean, I don't quite agree with you. I did not expect this to be turning into a live stream about animal, you know, about pet management, right? But my position is different. I think with cats and dogs, with dogs, you have to have a very clear and established owner master, you know, pet relationship, right? Where the owner is the master of the dog, right? With cats, you don't have to have that, but what you have to do is have a pride type relationship. I don't mean LGBT pride. I mean like a pride of cats, right? So the cats have more complex interrelationships where there is a dominant cat, and I am, you know, you have to become the dominant cat. But that's different than being the owner or the master, right? So, which means that you can't be you can't be a tyrant, because if you do that, your cats are going to react in very, very negative ways. They're going to have all kinds of neuroses because of that. What you have to do is, when it really matters, you have to be aggressive with them. But when it doesn't matter, you shouldn't be aggressive with them, and you shouldn't be trying to intentionally provoke them into submission, right? Like that's my perspective. People might have other ideas, but whatever. Yeah, I think I'm done talking about herding cats now. So yeah, that. My Invisible College game is going great. It's you know, you never know for sure. Even when you do play testing, it's hard until you actually run a full campaign to get all the details of it. And so far, I think it's doing in my campaign, it's doing really well, and I think that means that it's a good game for campaigning with. And you have a lot of different, the more that we're playing it, the more you can see the potential of what you can possibly do with it and how it can be used in a number of different ways. So it just makes me all the more happy of how that product has turned out. The Invisible College, strongly recommended to anyone. It's a great game. Here it is. Look for the sigillum. The Invisible College is Occult. In case there's some crazy guy that's on here and doesn't already know this, it's Occult modern OSR role playing. It's set in the modern world with occult authentic magic. That's to say, the magic system in the Invisible College is based on how Hermetic magicians believe magic works today. Okay? And it's based on the techniques and teachings of modern Hermetic magic, which is could be, because if you did that and if it was just gimmicky, right? Like if that was the point of it, and then the game itself was unplayable, that would be really bad. But as it turns out, the game is really playable. At least it has been for my group. I'd love to hear other people's experiences with it, because of course, one thing is for me to be GMing it, and another thing is for somebody else to be GMing it. And in fact, it would be one thing to have someone who's really familiar with the occult jamming it, and someone else who isn't familiar with the occult jamming it, and to see if both of them had good experiences. If that becomes the case, then I would consider this 100% success, right? If it's the case that, one or the other has, probably the one that with less occult knowledge has more trouble with it, then I wouldn't be quite as happy, So we have to see. But I think it's set up because, for example, my players, for the playtest, I intentionally picked a range of players from people that claimed that they were quite knowledgeable about the occult, all the way to people who had no knowledge of the occult, right? And so this was the range, and all of them seemed to be managing the game quite easily. Knights and Legends says, "Good night, folks. Don't support the woke." Okay, see you later, Knights and Legends. Thank you for coming by. Taryn Shield says, "At this point, I would almost welcome the Christian fundies raging about RPGs again. It's a change of pace at least." Well, we now realize the place where the fundamentalists got it all wrong is that they tried to attack RPGs from the outside, They should have tried to take them over the way the communists are trying to do. Leftist totalitarianism is more efficient than rightist authoritarianism. Okay, so let's see what else we have to talk about tonight. Well, on the subject of authoritarianism or totalitarianism rather, to move into that for a moment. I'll get back to talking about RPG stuff in a second, but I don't know if you guys noticed something. I had predicted on social media, I think on my blogs, a few years ago already, I had predicted it was only a matter of time that the only reason that SJWs weren't burning books was just because of the inertia, the weight of how much of a taboo that was. But that eventually that taboo, they'll have weakened it enough that they will consider themselves justified to burn books, and they will burn books, and people will act as though it's mostly normal, right? It might be controversial, but totally allowable, right? Like it's not, because there was a time when if you imagine a group of people burning books, those people would be pariahs, right? They would be completely excised from society. That was when we had a really good society, right? Now we don't have that anymore. And in case you haven't heard, we have just had an incident, or at least it's an incident just come to light in Canada, where it was a school board had a mass burning of books that were considered racist by them, and they made the school children attend and acted as though it was almost a religious ceremony of burning these books in order to exorcise the evil and discrimination that these books represented. And what books were these? I mean, were they burning Mein Kampf or something? No. They were burning children's books, including, in particularly cited in the article I read, were the cartoon books of Asterix and Obelix and Tintin, which are very, I don't know, in the United States, I don't think they ever took off quite as much, but In Canada, I can tell you that they were certainly books that were in every library and every school library when we were kids, right? Tintin and Asterix are, they're both European comics, but they're legendary. They're famous, right? And they were burning these products as racist for the sake of diversity. So this is just me pointing out that I predicted this, that a lot of people, including a lot of people on the right, laughed at me because of this prediction. And once again, I was completely right. Because again, there is outrage, but nobody's going to suffer anything from it. Nobody's going to get fired from this. And it's just a matter of time. Maybe now it'll be controversial for a little while, but I think in probably a couple of years, it'll become normal. And then they'll start doing it all over the place. That's the danger that you're in. And you could say, oh, you might be American. So you might say, oh, well, yeah, but that's Canada, right? Canada is insane and what have you. And you're right, Canada is insane. But if you seriously don't believe that school boards in the United States are not going to start doing this, I think you've got another thing coming to you. I think you're going to be very wrong. That book burnings are going to happen in the United States too. And if there's ever proof that the SJWs are the real fascists, it's book burning, right? It's something that is the most fundamentally contrary to classical values that you can imagine, is the burning of books. Anyway, all is not totally lost though, because I do think that we're beginning to see a kind of a reaction. People have been pointing out that as much as the SJWs panicked about the Red List, what also happened is that you had a whole bunch of people discovering the Red List and coming on to cheer it, right? Like we had new members on the RPG site, etc. I think we are now beginning to see the start of the Thermadorian reaction to the Jacobinism of the SJWs. The fight back is happening in a very real sense. I certainly feel much less alone in my fight than I did a few years ago, and even than I did 2 years ago. So I from my point of view, it certainly seems like there's more of a strong reaction. And you know what happened? We were talking about the satanic panic here earlier. Well, there were some real consequences to the satanic panic as it relates to RPGs, right? Which is that in RPGs you had all this reaction of people, of games, most famously TSR, trying to Bowdlerize their products, trying to remove some of the things that fundamentalists might be offended by. And that was the short-term reaction. The long-term reaction of the satanic panic was that for a long time, Christianity got a really bad name among RPG players, right? It became something where, RPG products tended to be pushing towards the direction of neo-paganism, witchcraft, Buddhism, whatever, or atheism. And you could make you'd see a lot of RPGs all through the 90s that were either anti-religious in general, anti-Christian in particular, or that were pro any religion but Christian, and especially if it was kind of an occult religion or what have you, right? Whatever you want to call it, a religion that particularly pisses off the Christian people, right? And in a lot of gaming tables, you saw it too. You saw a lot of gamers that would very proudly talk about their paganism, but Christians, if anybody went to a gaming club and said they were a Christian in a lot of parts of the world, not necessarily maybe in the Bible Belt, but in a lot of parts, that person might end up getting an earful from some autistic nerd that had just declared themselves a neo-pagan. And the neo-pagan would feel confident enough to say that in that environment, because you'd have all of these gamers that had felt put upon by the persecution they personally suffered from fundamentalist Christians, right? So there was a very strong sort of pushback that was the pushback against Christianity that was the result, I think, directly of the Satanic Panic's attack on RPGs. So I think that we are starting to see a reaction against SJWs, and I suspect that the long-term result of this is going to be a similar kind of reaction against wokeism and everything associated with it in the RPG world. And just like, the woke crowd will, just like fundamentalist Christians haven't completely gone away, but they've lost all power and influence in society, you're likely to see a situation where in the future there will still be some woke people out there. It's just that nobody's going to like them anymore. They're gonna lose their power. And then in gaming world, it'll be very interesting to see just how that reaction goes, right? Like, I think certainly there'll be a strong reaction against anyone putting their personal politics into RPG products. But I could be wrong, because maybe the reaction is going to be broader than that, so that suddenly being left wing in gaming clubs will make you be looked at with the stink eye, the way somebody saying they were Christian in a gaming club made you get looked at with the stink eye in the mid to late 90s, because people suspect you're trying to oppress them, right? So, if you come out as being a Democrat, I wonder if in like 10 years, if you come out as being a Democrat in a gaming club, people will look at you and say, yeah, well, we don't need your wokeism here, or something like that, like it might be that way too. So it's an interesting thing to think about, just what exactly the reaction, how it's going to come out. Will we have a bigger push towards games being apolitical, which frankly I would prefer, or will they, will we see a bunch of games promoting maybe libertarian ideas or even conservative ideas? Maybe there'll be a resurgence. All of a sudden, it'll be okay to have Christian RPGs or something like that, because everybody, by that point, there'll be more people gaming that were oppressed by people who oppress Christians than that were oppressed by Christians, So, some comments from the crowd here. Sadwings Raging says, get physical copies of everything, because there was some comment earlier that was talking about erasing, digital copies, digital book burning, where basically digital copies will be changed, rewritten, or just deleted forever, So yeah, get physical copies of everything. And then he says, except Pundit stuff. If his stuff gets retconned, it won't matter, because we will all be playing a game with him in the gulag. Well, you're technically right, but get my stuff in print anyways, because my products in print are really cool. So please do. And to support me, be sure to pick up my books like Lion and Dragon, Arrows of Indra, Invisible College. But also pick up my PDFs, like the RPG Pundit Presents PDFs, because those are on PDF. And, in theory, if the censorship gets more extremes, that they could be hard to get on the internet. You never know. Jim Linden says SJW plus eugenics equals Pol Pot. Well, SJWs do believe in eugenics, so there you go. Taryn Chul says Hollywood is showing signs of turning away from woke. To steal a phrase, it's a big boat, takes a long time to steer, and a lot of the crew are still saboteurs, but it is turning. That might be true. You got to remember that almost anything in Hollywood takes 4 years to do, right? Like movies that come out today, they were started, the earliest stage, they were probably started like 4 years ago, right? The first moments of getting that movie to happen. So the stuff that is going to be happening, starting to happen right now, is going to be stuff that will come out in Hollywood in like 2024 or 2025, right? So it might take time. Yes, that's true. Shad Sar says Pundit is a poutine eater. Well, a poutine eater is generally thought of to be somebody from Quebec, at least in Canada. Maybe outside of Canada, people think everybody eats poutine, but actually poutine is delicious. But no, I'm an Albertan. Total Party Skill says the new Ghostbusters being an unquestioned hit would help a lot to change the minds of Hollywood's money men. Well, assuming that the new Ghostbusters is as unwoke as it appears that it's going to be, but remember, sometimes appearances can be deceiving. We've seen, like look at that He-Man trailer, right? We've seen a lot of cases where and this is why SJWs hate the RedList, right? Because they talk amongst themselves all about very openly and on social media very openly about their extremist politics, right? But when they're promoting their games, there's a lot of them, not all of them, some of them are transparent about it, but there's a lot of them that in trying to sell their games, try to present them as normal games. And it's only once you've bought the product that you realize you've bought some kind of left-wing propaganda bullshit, right? So, we'll see if Ghostbusters is actually as good as it appears to be. I hope so, obviously. Tarantule is leaving. Thank you for coming, Tarantule. I hope you enjoyed it. Whoops. Total Party Skills says there's no stopping communist subversion. It happened back in the 50s, 60s. We have to stop fighting yesterday's battles and actively assess what the modern iteration has become. Well, I think that's what we are doing. Yeah, but I think that the key is not to stop fighting battles. It's to realize how to fight battles efficiently, right? And a lot of that means taking their tactics and twisting it around to them. Another reason they hate this list is because SJWs make lists. And they thought that's a tactic we wouldn't make. But we've made now a list, and it's a list that's different from theirs because it's not a ban list or a block list or a blacklist, but it's a list that exposes them, right? And that's a morally acceptable way for the anti-SJW movement to expose these people. Rollstat says, Pundit, create a supplement that focuses on imperialism and non-European powers. The SJW need to know that Abyssinia, China, Japan, and the Ottoman Empire weren't the white hetero patriarchy. Yes, well, that's true. You know what? I mean, I don't want to make any product that's just to piss off the SJWs, even though my next product, the one that I've almost finished my work on now, is going to be about the Crusades. So there you are. But, and it's also going to feature quite a bit of tyrannical craziness coming from non-European powers, of course, because the Silk Road, that region was obviously full of all kinds of stuff. But I'm not making it to make a modern political commentary, right? And I don't want to make any product to make a modern political commentary, But I mean, if I was ever to do a historical source book that was really focused on a brutal and tyrannical empire founded in history, right? That was unquestionably evil. I'd do it on the Aztecs, right? Without a doubt. There's a reason. I mean, the Aztecs were not beaten by 200 Spaniards. They were beaten by hundreds of thousands of people from the tribes around them that hated them for everything that the Aztecs had done to them. Those are the ones that beat the Aztecs, that destroyed the Aztec Empire, and very well deserved. Alpha 9 says, I do appreciate the RPG list as someone who would rather spend time on YouTube than on Twitter. Well, God bless you, Alpha 9. You're actually that's a very sane thing for you to do and very good for your health, to spend more time on YouTube and less on Twitter. Adino the Esnite says, hey Pundit, do you specialize in a certain area of history in your studies, or is it more general? I specialized, actually I did an honors undergraduate degree and specialized in my undergraduate degree on two areas for major, like I didn't have an actual minor. It was, the way that it was set up at that time, if you did an honors degree in the University of Alberta, you didn't have a minor. You just basically did it was like a double major in the same subject, right? So I focused on the origins of Christianity and on the early modern era, religious studies in the early modern era, which is to say the Protestant Reformation era and the basically the 15th and 16th centuries, right? So I was looking specifically there at subjects. I mean, I studied about a lot of science. I studied about a lot about the Protestant Reformation, obviously, but I was actually studying about medieval and early modern magic and occultism in that period. And then later, I did a comparative studies on modern esoteric religions and occult movements. Indigo Dragon says, so I'm hearing, is modern day woke left are the modern day Aztecs that should be rebelled against? Well, that's certainly right, and in fact, there are some Latino SJWs make a big point of putting on Aztec trappings, and in California recently. You want to talk about, I mean, school boards in the United States, I haven't heard of one doing a book burning yet, but there was a school board in California that authorized having students praying to the Aztec god of child blood sacrifice, the rain god, right? Which is also, the rain god was specifically a god that you sacrificed, that you sacrificed children to. Meatball, what are you doing? Why do you come back here? Hey. Psst, psst. Come on, get out of there. Do not wreck my set. Come on, go over there. Come here. I have distracted her with a pencil. That's the good side of this. Yeah. Go on, sit on top of the invisible college. Very good. There we go. We've moved her to the other side. In fact, the Latino communist branch of the SJWs, so I don't think that, I'm not saying they're actual believers, but they certainly like the Aztec elements of the trappings, and they know why, right? They want to envision a kind of idea of this Latino supremacy. Well, then the evil empire that you want to base yourself on are the Aztecs, right? Because they were certainly effective, you'll give them that, until their whole scenario, their whole paradigm got disrupted by the arrival of Europeans, who were considerably less worse than the Aztec were, right? Meatball's all cuddly now. She's off screen here, but getting quite a lot of petting. Let me take a look at what else we're talking about here. Adino says, thank you for the reply. One of the areas I'm weak in as a game master is political intrigue. Do you have any RPG Pundit presents that can help? Well, to a certain degree, I guess. There's in one issue, forgive me that I don't remember the number, but there's an issue called 30 Courtly Events and Intrigues, which is also in the old school companion. So you could just get the old school companion if you wanted to, where I talk about that, And I don't know, a lot of my adventures have kind of intrigues and stuff like that, though not always stuff that would be like modern day political intrigue, obviously. I don't know. The thing is, obviously, you don't want to create mechanics for that. At least that I wouldn't do that, right? I mean, you can create mechanics for like groups, like in the style of what what Kevin Crawford has done for a long time, but also what I've done in the Invisible College, where I have like in the appendix to the Invisible College, I have a whole system for determining how much influence each occult conspiracy has over ordinary world groups, right? And so you can pick something like whether it's the CDC or the school board of California or something like that, and work out which of the occult conspiracies has main control, and if there are any that have secondary controls over it, and what have you. So yeah, we that might be of use to you, or for that matter, the rules for creating a hall, or even the rules for creating a cult in Cults of Chaos, but the actual how to do political intrigue in terms of game and role playing, I always say you really need to role play it, So I guess I can switch topics now. We've talked about SJWism for a while. I think I could mention, I just mentioned that I'm nearly finished working on, and so far in terms of Word format, I'm at about 136 pages, which will be more than that in an actual book format. My source book on the Third Crusade and the Silk Road. I still haven't really come up with a good name for it, because I don't really want to call it the Third Crusade and the Silk Road. If I call it one or the other, I'll probably call it Silk Road, because the actual bigger part of the campaign is focused on the Silk Road, because the Third Crusades is an event that lasted just like a couple of years, right? It's not a very long or big event, right? So I wanted there, I like my game settings to have epically big timelines, right? So instead I've got like this whole timeline covering from like the 1180s until the 1220s or so, that details the events of the Silk Road. And I cover, like every city on the Silk Road at that time, all kinds of rules for adventuring, new classes, new abilities, and things like that, monsters, and all of it, again, is authentic, right? Like the monsters are based on actual Persian or Turkic or Arab or Chinese monsters or Indian monsters or, some Mongol monsters even. The magic is based on, again, myths and legends of the contemporary period and place. So it's going to be very much in that style. If any of you have an idea to suggest for what the hell I named this thing, I sure would like I'm open to any suggestions, And obviously the Third Crusade is going to focus on, that is, to me, the Third Crusade is the most iconic of the Crusades, right? It was the best part of the whole series, right? You started out, the first one was quite good. The second one was kind of a flop. The third one turned out to be really good too. The fourth one was sort of a mess. It's kind of like editions of D&D actually, when you think about it. But the third one was kind of the one, when you think of a Crusade, you think of Saladin and Richard the Lionhearted. So I wanted it to be the one that had Saladin and Richard the Lionhearted. Although actually, if in the timeline, you will actually play the Third and the Fourth Crusade, as well as the German Crusade, which was something that happened at that same time. So there's a lot of opportunities to, if you really want to play a campaign where your characters are based in Outremer, in the European Christian holdings in the Levant, and you don't go on the Silk Road, but you're focused there, you can totally play there, because it covers everything that's going on in the Crusader states in Syria and all of that stuff before, during, and after the Third Crusade for about 20 or so years, 20, 30 years, I think it's going to be a very good game. I still haven't even started looking for a publisher for it. If you're watching and you're a publisher of RPG products that has at least a couple of products under your belt that I can judge by, one or two one big product or a few little products or whatever, and you want to try to pitch at me for being the one who publishes my Crusades book, let me know. Of course, there is a chance that some of my current publishers might want to take me up on the offer, but I haven't really I haven't even started. I just ended up in this flurry of writing for it. It's getting done a lot sooner than I thought it was going to be, but I am starting to look at. I guess as of today, I'm starting to look at publishers. So if you want to try to propose yourself, then feel free to send me a message on Twitter, comment on the thread, on a comment on the comments of the YouTube video, or send me a personal message on the RPG site. Get in touch with me whatever way you can, and we'll see. Yeah, Seafire says try a name in Latin. Well, yeah, I mean, you could. There'd be such a temptation to just say Deus Volt, but I don't want to call it that. John Gostrick says Silk Road Trip. That sounds a little bit too much like it might be an RPG about the modern day Darknet or something, Total Party Skill says Lion and Dragon could already be used for Richard Lionheart's campaign. Well, yeah, obviously. The Silk Road book is not an RPG, a complete RPG. It's a source book, and it's a source book that's usable for any OSR game, but it's specifically, obviously meant to be a source book for Lion and Dragon, you know. So yes, it's definitely for that. Paris Sangvi goes, Richard the Lionheart was a Frenchman. Well, yeah, technically. I mean, he was a Plantagenet. There weren't really, he was Frankish. Let's put it that way. He was Frankish. He would not have thought of himself as a Frenchman. He was, for most of his life, the enemy of the King of the Franks, right? So, but he was also very much part of what would become Englishness. Like, one of the things about Richard the Lionheart is that Richard the Lionheart claimed that he had rediscovered Excalibur and went around with a sword that he claimed was Excalibur, which of course might have been Excalibur. Who knows, right? That probably wasn't, but he might have been, right? And so he was very much making a claim to a legend of what would at one point be the foundational national myth of England, right? Which is Arthur, right? He was saying, I'm the new Arthur. So there is parts of him that were very much not, you know, to say he was a Frenchman is not really quite accurate, is it? Total Party Skills says Claudius killed the OG Brits. That's not true. The Romans conquered the Britons. It was the Saxons that killed the original Britons. Though, in fact, most Britons today still have, you know, like the ones that are native Britons will have, depending on where they are, I mean, they'll obviously have potentially Viking, Norman, or Saxon genetics, but there are other genetics that an awful lot of them still have will be what is the genetics of technically Britons, except they're not Britons. They're the same ancient people that had been there since forever. They weren't actually Celts even, apparently, because the Celts came over and conquered Gaul, but they never conquered Britain. We thought they had. We thought that the British were Celts, but they're actually, you know, they're the same Beaker people that had always been there, and they just had become Celtified culturally to the point that they were almost indistinguishable, you know. So it was more of a cultural conquest than anything else. It's very interesting. Very recent our archaeology and obviously analysis has been, you know, including genetic analysis of British people in large amounts, has been proving that. Alpha 9 suggests lion spice and silk dragons. No, no, I won't be calling it that. Dark prom of darkness. Yeah, there will be no proms on the Silk Road or in the Crusade. Charlotte Williams says, hey, Pundit, what are your thoughts on unit system? I've never liked unit system. I'm sorry to say, Charlotte Williams. Not my cup of tea. Total Party Skill says, well, the Albion setting book is the Rose War. So if the Silk Road book was named after a specific regional conflict like the Turks or Persians, maybe the fall of the original Baghdad. Yeah, that is a possibility. I might think about that. The problem is to think about what is, you know, something that is going to be somewhat recognizable. Or maybe I should do some kind of a variant, I don't know, like, you know, Lion and Dragon, right? It's called Lion and Dragon because it represents, you know, the Plantagenet lion and the Tudor dragon. But maybe, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say like, okay, so it's about the Crusades, and it's about the Silk Road. You know, so how would we do that in a way that sounds good too? I've got to keep thinking about this. I don't know. Sadwings Raging says, what years did Marco Polo spend in China? He was there in the 13th century, a little bit after what would be the timeline. But yes, he went all the way down the Silk Road to go to China. But it was a very different Silk Road by then, because it was the Silk Road that had been conquered, had been devastated by the Mongols, and was then, occupied by client states of the Mongols and Kublai Khan. And so, although it was still, by the time of Kublai Khan, the Silk Road was kind of rebooted and was working again. It was very different from what it was like at the time that I'm setting it in, which is like the peak point of the original, the original Silk Road. It was also the moment, the Third Crusade is after the Third Crusade is the first moment where European goods start coming in important numbers into the Silk Road, and most importantly, where Silk Road items start coming in large amounts to Europe and can even get to Britain, right? So that's one of the reasons why I picked that moment. It's the moment the Silk Road opened up to the Christian world. So it's a very interesting time. And then suddenly that you see the sudden drop where it all kind of shuts down again for decades. And that drop is because basically the end of the Silk Road campaigns book is a couple of years where Genghis Khan comes charging through the Silk Road, destroying absolutely everything in his path. So it's a great way. I think that's a great way to end a long term. If you play like a long term campaign of the Silk Road, you played like 25 years of this epic Silk Road campaign, and you're in the middle of all these conflicts through these different kingdoms that were there, right? Like you had the Khwarezmian Shahs, you had the Jia, you had the Jing dynasty, you had the Great Liao, you had the Ghurids, and obviously the Arabs, and all of them, the descendants of Saladin, and they were all of them in these kind of epic conflicts for power, and then suddenly this sweeping monstrous horde comes in and just destroys their world. It was the end of the world for them. It really was, right? Like the amount, one of the chief reasons for why the West ended up becoming dominant by the early modern period is because of the Mongols. Because the Mongols completely devastated China, and they completely devastated the Silk Road and the Middle East. They devastated the Chinese world civilization and the Muslim civilization, but they were stopped from devastating the Christian civilization in Europe, and that made the difference. Because to a certain extent, those other civilizations remained psychologically traumatized by the Mongol devastation for hundreds of years to come. So that, like you see in both cases, what they rebuilt after the Mongols. So the Ottomans in the Muslim world and the Ming dynasty in China, both of them were backwards looking cultures. That is to say, they were saying, well, we want to recreate our own glorious past, right? We want to remake. The Ming dynasty was all about remaking what the Song were like, and so obviously they were like doing a fake golden age version of that, and then rigidly refusing to change anything that wasn't strict tradition. They became strict traditionalists, which was ironic because before the Mongols, both in the Middle East and in China, you had these incredible levels of development and innovation, right? They were great. One of the great defining things of those golden ages was that they were full of innovation. And then these the post-Mongol states, instead turned into the blind worship of the past and a complete failure to innovate. And so the West caught up and then surpassed them. Total Party Skills says, I don't know if he's answering somebody else that I've missed. But he says, your first book is not likely to be a hit, but after your 10th book, people will start to recognize your name when browsing and will be more likely to buy if you have a catalog. That's very true. If you're making RPGs, also the first RPG product you make is going to be your worst one, probably, because you're going to learn a lot of lessons from it, right? And each product that you make is going to be based on, lessons learned. I will also say that if you haven't gotten to your 10th book yet, another way to help add to your marketability and to call attention to your company is if you were to, hey, get into a deal with somebody who's already a very well-known game designer who is looking for a publisher, right? Like the RPG Pundit. So, you know, I've had a lot of game companies that have teamed up with me over the years, Flying Mice Games, Bedrock, Presses, Spectre Press. I'm sure I'm forgetting one or two there, probably two. Oh yeah, Adom Publishing, of course. So some of them had already, Presses was already pretty advanced, and Flying Mice had done quite a few products. The other ones quite a bit less so, and I think that having an RPG Pundit product in their catalog certainly helped them. Dynasties and daimyos. Shadzar, I think you need to study a little more about what daimyos are and where they came from. There were no daimyos on the Silk Road. Silver and Silk. Yeah, you know what? That is actually an appropriate name, because the single greatest export of the Silk Road towards the West was obviously silk as well as spices. It could be spices, right? So it could be silver and spice. And the single greatest import from Europe was pure silver, right? That's the thing Europe had that the Silk Road really wanted. A very distant second was like wool and linen, but silver was the number one thing. Europeans were putting money into the Silk Road and getting products out of it. However, the problem with both silver and silk, or silver and spice, is that they both sound sort of like softcore porn books or something. I'm not too sure that would quite work. Judd Goswick says a Song Dynasty book has appealed to me. Well, technically, the Silk Road book is set during the Southern Song Dynasty, the late Song Dynasty, right? And so I do talk a little bit about the song there, and I'm pretty sure that's a setup that someday I might use to make another book, a related book that is set in the Southern Song Dynasty, because the Song are by far not just my favorite dynasty, but probably my favorite civilization after, the modern West. But yeah, they're fascinating. Saturn Rage says horsemen and harems. Yeah, well, I'm not too keen on putting harems in the title of a book. They might mistake it for a Grim Jim book or something. Dehydrated scimitar houris. I get that one. I see what you did there. Some desert dude says, someone deleting my posts, lol. Well, I'm not deleting your posts, but it could be that, from what I understand, sometimes YouTube deletes posts, especially if you post links. I think people commenting on YouTube aren't allowed to post links on live chats, I think. So maybe if you post a link, that's might be what happened. Panic at the Caravanserai. I kind of like that one, but it sounds a little too hipster. Anyways, we'll keep working on it, and keep feeling free to share your suggestions about that. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to talk about. Oh yeah, well, we were talking about the Thermadorian reaction against against wokeism. There's a very good sign that has popped up just recently, which is that there was this study that got made by was it Morning Consult? I think it was. Yeah, Morning Consult, which is they're a very legitimate company that collects data and information, polling and things like that. And they have discovered something that I think was quite a surprise to them when they did a poll on the subject of cancel culture and, therefore kind of wokeism as a whole. And they found out in a poll made of over 2,200 people, divided by age, the first thing, which was no surprise, which was that out of all of the different generations that they pulled baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. And out of all of them, only millennials have a higher favorable or neutral favorable rating than a negative rating of cancel culture. Every other generation has a higher negative rating, and even millennials millennials are 36% against cancel culture, but they're 19% favorable to it, which is by far the highest, and 22% accepting of it, you could say neutral. But every other generation is more against it. But the one that's the most against it are Gen Z. Gen Z have a 55% unfavorable rating, and only 8%, there's that number again, the magic 8%, the default of actual SJWs in society. Only 8% of Gen Z people are in favor of it. And it gets even more interesting when you break it down. They define Gen Z as people ranging from the ages of 13 to 24 right now. And when you break it down into age groups, the younger the group is, the more they're against it. So Gen Z people that are in their 20s now, 20 to 24, or sorry, 21 to 24, are 48% opposed to cancel culture and only 13% in favor of it. But Gen Zs that are 17 to 20 years old are 57% opposed to cancel culture and only 7% in favor of it. And Gen Zs that are 13 to 16 years old are 59% opposed to cancel culture and only 6% are in favor of it. So this is a huge, huge difference, right? This is a big change. And what it points out is something that I had predicted all along about the Gen Zs, which is the Gen Zs were never oppressed by fundamentalist Christians, right? They never had Republicans who were in charge of school boards or who were their teachers or things like that. They never had this. Their school never banned D&D. You never had the Christian church able to get books taken away from the school library. You never had a commission of mostly conservatives, but also some Democrat people trying to ban their favorite rock music, right? None of that has ever happened to the people who are teenagers today. The people who are teenagers today have had everything they like being controlled, regulated, condemned, or attacked by millennials, right? Who are leftist millennials. So you want to see where the Thermadorian reaction will be coming from. You know, by the way, that term, the Thermadorian reaction, was the reaction that happened against the reign of terror of the Jacobins, right? Robespierre and company. A movement, the Thermadorians, the Thermador was the date the month that it happened in the end, where the worst culprits of the reign of terror were themselves arrested. Most of them were beheaded. Some of them were imprisoned for ages. And you had all of these moderates and conservatives within France that took back control. They overthrew the Jacobins. They imposed anti-Jacobinism. They purged them from government. And during this, there was this group of a lot of this, you know, because just like anywhere else in France, it's all governed by mobs there, right? The guys that impulsed this were these mobs of fashionable, foppish-looking teenagers that went around assaulting Jacobins, you know, and they were, you know, basically the youth of the middle class, really, because there were no upper class left by then, right? That had risen up with some fairly brutal force against the oppression that they were feeling that was brought about by these revolutionary Jacobins, right? So it's really quite fascinating how that came to happen, you know. They were originally called the Muscaden because they wore heavy purses. They went around dressed as they were also called the Incroyables, the Incredibles. They were dressed in fancy clothing and they went around acting in ways that were a reflection of the older tradition, right? So they suddenly started dressing like the generation that had been wiped out by the French revolutionaries, and they were they were not all that sure what they wanted, but they sure as heck knew what they didn't want, and what they didn't want was Jacobinism. They didn't want the constant terror that their lives had become, where any wrong move could lead them to the guillotine, right? And I think that that's what you're going to see when these Gen Zs get a little bit older. That's that's going to be the peak period of the Thermadorian reaction. It's going to be very interesting. Nicholas Taylor says, "Hey, I resemble that millennial remark." Yeah, well, millennials are the most trash of all generations. I'm sorry to say, it's just a fact. Gen Z were the least trash, but Gen X were the least trash, but now maybe Gen Z will be. Because speaking as a Gen Xer, we're sick of both millennials and baby boomers who are also trash. But frankly, there's a lot of Gen Xers who are trash too. So I'm not gonna try to gild present a rosy image of my own generation, because they're a part of the problem too. Judd Gossick says, Zoomers rebelling against the nonsense is a good trend. Yeah, let's hope so. Let's really hope so. Doomsword Deathmaster says, wait until they meet the next gen, the one with our children in it. Yeah, well, here's the thing, right? The woke crowd barely have children. They really don't, right? They tend to figure out ways not to reproduce, collectively speaking. Whereas, obviously, conservatives have way more children, and so these children have all the potential of being very promising, unless you put your children in school, because then they're going to get 18 years of being trained out of and brainwashed out of with much more professional effectiveness than what a parent has. They're going to be intentionally directed to despise you and everything you stand for, and they're going to be completely corrupted. So it's fine that you're having more children, but it won't really help if you give over your children for a very large proportion of their lives to be used as pawns against you by your enemy, right? You don't want your enemy educating your children. Yes, Tipper Gore was behind the parental advisory thing. She's behind the whole. She was the impetus of the entire congressional investigation into the evils of rock music. But that doesn't mean that a large part of the people that supported that weren't also Republicans, right? What the hell? So apparently they can, the live chat, or rather the chat can go ahead and block posts of certain people, but it's getting a bunch of it's getting a bunch of spam now. It's amazing. All right, there we go. All right, so gotten rid of the spam. And well, let's see, what else have we got to talk about, if anything? It's getting on in time now. So what have we been at? How long have we been filming this? It is at, doesn't say, where does it say how much it's been? I don't know. Oh yeah, here we go. 1 hour and 44 minutes. Wow, that's a very long, that's a very long video. Uh, I guess I could be wrapping it up um, before I lose my voice. But if anyone has any final comments, questions, or whatever, now's the time to post it. And meanwhile, I will tell you all, please share the video. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed. And be sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss future events like this sort of live stream. And, you know, like the video, all of that sort of stuff. Questions. Any new gaming releases you're excited about? Well, it's hard to say. I mean, I could say that I think that Orc and Bone is interesting. Total Party Skills upcoming game is interesting, but I have to point out that I was a paid consultant for it. So you could think that might just be me doing advertising. But I think it's going to be an interesting game. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what Venture Satanis does and whether or not he totally screws up Encounter Critical. But I think he's offered for me to be a consultant on that too. So if I am, I'm going to try to make sure he doesn't he doesn't mess it up and we get something cool with Encounter Critical. That's going to be very interesting. I don't know about much other products. I don't tend to know very much about upcoming products, but when products come out, I like them. I guess that's all I can really comment about that. Well done on reaching 4,000 subscribers. Thank you, Universal Knight. Thanks for the products, Pundit, says Doomsword Deathmaster. The ones I bought are quite good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, thank you to all of you guys. I mean, you're the ones that have gotten me to this point, and if you keep on supporting me, I'm going to keep on doing this. And if you want to support me, I do have a Patreon. Oh, that was another thing, that there's this SJW, there's one in particular that keeps saying, oh, RPG Pundit's obviously a failure because he only has like 9 followers on Patreon, right? But you guys who watch my videos, you know, I always end up saying, if you really want to throw money at me, you can subscribe to my Patreon and support me there. Or if you've bought everything I already made, you can go ahead and support me on Patreon if you want to do that. But I would strongly suggest that if you want to get something back, because I don't put anything on the Patreon, it's just there for people that really want to say, hey, good job and keep doing the videos, right? Which is wonderful. And I'm very grateful for my 9 Patreon supporters. But I tell people in every single video that it's much cooler if you buy my games, because then you get something in return. You get something back, right? Which is awesome. But even so, there's some dude on Twitter that keeps saying that, oh yeah, Pundit is obviously a failure because he only has 9 followers on Patreon, right? Every time I do a video, I sell dozens of books, okay? Every video, dozens and dozens of books, more than I sell on a day when I don't do a video. So that is a direct link, right? It's really, you know, some of the claims that these people make are so ridiculous. But hey, if you've got everything, right? If you've got all my products, support me on Patreon. There we go. Why not? You know, or if you just want to drive this person nuts, whoever they are. I barely know them. It's another funny thing about there's some of these SJWs when I've been shown some of the things, because people send me, you know, screenshots when someone's attacking me, and you know, a lot of them correctly assuming that the people who attack me on Twitter also tend to block me on Twitter, so I can't see them attacking me on Twitter, because that's how afraid they are, right? That's how cowardly they are. But you know, I always assume you know, that yeah, these people are largely inconsequential. They're almost always pretty much nobodies, but they for them it's so obvious, especially some of the ones that are just constantly doing this, that I am their entire life. You know, like that they dedicate, that they're bigger super fans than some of you, right? They've watched every video I've ever made. They've read everything I've ever written anywhere that they can find. They carefully track everything I say, because of you can see in some of them the amount of time that they have dedicated to trying to find stuff to claim about me and to attack me and to manipulate and to alter the wording of it, et cetera, right? And so, you know, I am their entire world, and to them, to me, I barely know anything about them. You know, like I occasionally hear about it, and I'm like, oh yeah, that guy's kind of familiar. I think he's attacked me before, you know, and you know, but they're just completely meaningless. You know, it's so funny. Anyway, let's see if there's any additional comments. Pete Paul says SJWs love subscription type model as opposed to just making stuff someone actually wants to buy. Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, I realized very quickly I made a Patreon because some of you guys asked me to make a Patreon because for you that was the easiest or best way to support my work. So fine, I made a Patreon, but it's not. I made it very clear it's a Patreon. I don't do updates to the Patreon. I don't put stuff on Patreon and exclusive content or anything like that. It's a place where if you want to make sure that you're giving me $5 a month or whatever, then that you've got that, right? Especially if you're a big fan, you really support what I'm doing, you really support the fight that I'm fighting, you recognize how tough it is, you want to help me out, and you want to make a show of support and you've already bought all my books, or you just aren't interested in my books. That's a place to do it in, right? But yeah, Patreon, OnlyFans. I think I'll leave OnlyFans to. Who is that? Is that Zach, or is that Grim that has OnlyFans, or is it both of them? I'll leave that to them. Thank you very much. Seafire says they dig through your trash. Well, practically. And of course, what they're looking for is most often, like, I mean, I'm sure that they're hoping that they can find something that will be like confirmation of the imaginary version of me that they have, right? But most times it's not, and then they just lie anyways, right? So like they say, oh, I'm a trust fund baby, right? Or they say, oh, he has no supporters because he has only 9 Patreon followers, right? Or someone at one point took a quote I mentioned about Dr. Fauci, where I said that he had completely screwed up the response to pandemic, and then was put in charge of another one, claiming that this is like anti-vax misinformation or something. But that's not the pandemic I was talking about. I was talking about the AIDS pandemic. People apparently don't know or don't remember that Fauci, the exact same guy, was put in charge by Ronald Reagan in the late 80s of the HIV crisis, the HIV epidemic. And he completely mangled that up, right? He slowed down and screwed up all of the processes and protocols that were trying to be put into place to the effect that vast numbers of people got infected with HIV that might not have needed to have been if someone more competent was in charge, right? And yet that guy stayed in government and is today the highest paid non-political post in government, you know? So that tells you everything you need to know about government. My Patreon needs a meatball cam or Big Chungus stereoscopic images. Yeah, if I could set up a meatball and Big Chungus cam, I'm pretty sure that my Patreon would have hundreds of followers, but I don't see how to do that. Charlotte Williams says, found a half-eaten ham sandwich in Pundit's trash. Racist confirmed. All right. Well, I guess that's everything for today. Again, as we're saying, if you want to support me, you can support me on Patreon, or even just directly send me money via PayPal. There are links in the description. But what I would very strongly recommend is that instead you pick up my books. Stuff like Arrows of Indra, Lion and Dragon, The Invisible College, Dark Albion, Cults of Chaos, The Old School Companions, Star Adventure. There's so many of them now. World of the Last Sun. Because that's another thing they can't stand. It's just how crazy prolific I am, you know? Like, they're like, oh, he's never made anything. He's never written anything of note. You know, I have like 120 gaming products under my belt and multiple bestsellers on DTRPG and elsewhere, you know? There was one guy that was like claiming that he'd written a fanzine and he was more important than me, right? He'd written a fanzine and done a couple of contributions to the Pathfinder Guild, which I think is the Pathfinder Guild. I don't remember if it's like that you just worked for free for Pathfinder in exchange for having your name in the book, or if they paid you a pittance, you know, like, I don't know, 2 cents a word, or if you were subscribing to be in the guild, so you were actually literally paying them to write for them. But anyways, whatever it was a meaningless credit. And the guy had a product on DTRPG that had not even made Copper Bestseller, right? Which means that it had sold almost nothing. And I'm like, no, dude, that doesn't it. He goes, oh no, but it was a Kickstarter project. And look, right, his Kickstarter had made like $2,500. And I'm like, well, okay, congratulations, dude. You're the complete earnings that you have made from RPGs in your entire life is around what I'm making a month, you know, so whatever. That's the level of kind of delusion that these people put themselves into. Yeah, I'm not going to get into talking too much about. I probably shouldn't even have mentioned it now. Now this video might get demonetized or something. Anyway, Walmart gift card. Okay. I guess that's everything anyway. So if you want to support me, look at my products. Look at the RPG Pundit Presents series. There will be more issues of RPG Pundit Presents soon as Spectre Press decides to get on with it and make another one. I hope that'll be soon. But there are more coming. So that'll probably be the actual next product that you will see from me that's new after the Invisible College. Will be another issue of Pundit Presents. But there's already like 105 of them, and you're bound to find, if you haven't bought them, if you haven't looked at them yet, you're bound to find many of them that'll be useful for your OSR campaign, right? Be it that you're playing Lion and Dragon or not, be it that you're playing, you know, whatever Gonzo game you're playing or medieval game. There's tons of stuff in there, and you're gonna find cool stuff in there, right? Medieval authentic monsters, all kinds of weird magic systems and things like that, items. Adventures, encounters, setting locations, all sorts of things. Medieval authentic cities. Sadwings Raging says that crinkling noise is something new. Is it a Little Debbie treat? No, that was me. That's the tobacco pouch being opened as I filled my next pipe, which I am now lighting. So yeah, check out the RPG Pundit Presents series. You're going to find a lot of very good stuff there. And the issues range in price from like 99 cents to $4.99. So it's like you're buying me a coffee, but you're getting something in exchange. Judd Goswick says, is Presents going to drift into Invisible College stuff? Almost certainly not, because RPG Pundit Presents is done by Spectre Press, whereas the Invisible College is done by Well of Word Press. But there's a very good chance that there will be supplements that will come out for the Invisible College that will be published by Well of Word Press, some of which might be my own and some of which might be done by other people. So, and I believe that it is that Well of Word is open to allowing other people to publish Invisible College products also. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn for them, but I think they are. And so if you want to write something for the Invisible College, you can also get in touch and we can talk about it, right? But I'm pretty sure there are going to be books, other new stuff for the Invisible College. Malachi's Mercury says, Chungus as Jabba the Hutt t-shirt. Yeah, someone should do that, you know, our RPG Pundit marketing with big Chungus as Jabba the Hutt. Some pictures of her lying around, she looks so much like Jabba the Hutt. Anyway, I guess that is just about it. So I hope you guys have had a really good time. I've certainly have. We're now just about at 2 hours, which I think makes this the longest live stream I've ever done on this channel. Pretty cool. Avengers Invisible College supplement, the Black Pyramid of Wisconsin. Someone needs to post that to him on Twitter and tell him that now he has to make it. All right. He's obviously not here right now because it's past his bedtime, right? So anyways, check me out later. I'm going to be doing more videos another video in the week at least. And then if I'm not mistaken, in 2 weeks from now, we'll be having another episode of Inappropriate Characters too. So there we go. Thank you guys so much, and for showing up here and celebrating the 4,000 subscribers. Yeah, we'll see you guys all soon. Currently smoking Near Up Apple plus our Gentle Latakia. Thank you guys. Take care.